In this video, we're gonna hike to a waterfall, navigate some ice, grab some rocks, and see how well they polish. Come join me and Norman on a weekend adventure. We're heading out to Nelson County, Virginia, starting off at Crabtree Falls. We haven't even been here for 15 minutes when we get to this first viewpoint. You can't see the entire falls from here. It's a cascading waterfall, so it's sort of in chunks. But it's pretty cool that even if you have no interest in hiking to the top, you can just follow that paved path from the parking area and check it out. Rockhounding with my buddy here is always fun, but sometimes it helps if you tire him out a little bit first. It's a nearly 2-mile hike up to the top, climbing something like 1,200 feet in elevation to see one of the tallest cascading waterfalls east of the Mississippi. I think that'll be enough to get Norman here worn out enough to be a little bit more patient with me when I want to stop and look at rocks. It's just off the Blue Ridge Parkway, and it's part of the George Washington and Jefferson National Forests. Weirdly, there's a second Crabtree Falls along the Blue Ridge Parkway. That one's down in North Carolina. Don't make the mistake that I did and accidentally read about the wrong trail online, or you might think you're heading to a looping trail when really here in Virginia, it's out and back. Anyway, I started a YouTube channel partly to make an accessible repository of useful information, especially for my region. There's plenty of awesome videos of people finding rocks on the shores of the Great Lakes, or out in some desert out west. But YouTube is a bit more sparse when it comes to the Mid-Atlantic. So how do I even know what I'm looking for? Well, you can always just wing it. But if I'm going to go on a longer drive like this one, I would rather know what I'm getting myself into. So before I even head out, I do 2 different things. First, I check on some maps from the U.S. Geological Survey. I'll include a link in the description of the page on the USGS website with the map that I like to use. But actually, I prefer this app called Rocked. It's got the same maps imported into it, but it's a lot easier to navigate, and you can use it on your phone. So what do the maps have to say for this area? Does that mean anything to me at all? Well, sort of. But that takes me to the second thing I do. Next, I go to Facebook. There's a few state and regional rockhounding groups that I've joined. The ones for Virginia rockhounding are great resources, and once you've joined, that search feature becomes your best friend. People may not share the precise location where they found a particular rock, but they'll share things like what county were they in, and what are some landmarks nearby, so something like a river or a creek bed. So I will search either for where I'm going, or if there's a specific type of rock that I want, I'll search for the name of that rock. So before I set out for the day, I looked up Nelson County, Crabtree Falls, and the Tye River, just to see what information's out there. So just from those 2 steps before setting out, I know that I'm looking for some granite-type rocks, and there's a good chance they'll be magnetic. Rocks might have some black lines running through them from the pyroxene, and I'm probably going to find some blues, maybe something that looks a little bit like unakite. Now, let's check in on that hike. Norman had a blast. Just look at that smile. He's a natural at climbing all these staircases. There are a few different platforms where you get a great view of the waterfall from different heights. Just look at all those steps. We're pretty far in at this point, and it's starting to feel a little bit like it's never going to end.
Take it slow.
Gotta stay on the trail, buddy.
Did you find anything, Norman?
A lot of the trail is really well constructed. And there's some truly breathtaking views out here. Once we make it to the top, that's when the rockhounding can really begin. It's not safe to go off the trail back there. Dozens of people have died over the years when trying to go off trail. Slipping and falling is a serious risk. But now we're on the next segment of trail. It's called Crabtree Meadows, and as you'd expect from a meadow, it's pretty flat. You can tell it was pretty cold when I recorded this video because my hands are so red.
That'd be interesting.
Remember earlier when the maps told us to look out for ferromagnesian minerals? So ferromagnesian, we're talking about iron. And I suspect this at least has some iron in it. Look at that color. It's hard to tell what you're looking at because everything's so wet, cold, and dirty. So let's head home and I'll show you everything once it's cleaned off. All right, they're cleaned off, so let's quickly take a look at a few of these before we polish and tumble them. I suspect this tan color that a lot of them have is not going to polish very well. The blue patterns are pretty interesting though. I like the mix of the blue and red colors here because these are largely some form of granite or something kind of like granite. I'm not setting my expectations too high. Granite tends not to tumble very well. It's made of multiple materials, and generally one is going to be a bit softer than the other, and the one that's softer is going to tumble away faster. But we'll see what happens. I have some that I made into cabochons that we'll look at in a couple of minutes, but first, let's look at the ones that we polished. They took a much better shine than I anticipated they would. Although they're still a little bit weird, you can tell that there's multiple materials here and not everything polished well. I suspect the black lines that are running through this are the pyroxene that we talked about earlier. This one's probably my favorite of the ones that I tumbled. The black and white spider webbing with the red looks really cool. This one's really similar to the last one, but there's a neat little sparkle if you look real close. This one's really pretty. It's a very earthy looking rock. You can really tell on some of these that they just didn't round evenly. I like this one, but the colors almost look dirty. And as promised, the cabochons. I'm not sure if I'm going to make a necklace or anything out of any of these, but they do look really nice. You can see that this material, even though it doesn't tumble very well, you can, by hand, get a nice even shine. This one could have been really cool if it didn't have so many cracks in it. I really, really like how muted some of the colors are. You can see those nice grayish blues and dark reds. And then here's our last cabochon. It didn't quite come out perfect, but I like the colors. Until next time, bye!